Should you go into debt to start a business?
A lot of people do it. A lot of people think it's a good idea. It might be a bad idea. Let's talk about that.
All right, you kind of left us hanging there because you didn't, state with clarity, because it was just the introductory little hook. If it's a good idea, if it's a bad idea. Yeah, are you straddling the fence on this one again too?
I'm going to stay from the beginning. I'm leaning towards it's a bad idea to go into debt to start a business. I've got some reasons why, but the biggest reason is if you're not experienced as a business owner, you're taking on a huge risk. Most businesses fail, and you're going to go into debt to start something that you're not going to be able to pay that debt off.
You yourself have used the word risk in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That it's risk. There's risks you got to take in order to be an entrepreneur, stuff like that. Shouldn't that be kind of included, though, in weighing this question?
I actually really embrace risk. I think there's a lot of risk in entrepreneurship.
But altogether. That's after you kind of know what you're doing? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's different degrees of risk. It's like calculated risk.
That is true. Calculated
risk, I think, is important for growth and anything, but the risk of getting this is a real number. I did not, maybe I'll step back. When I started my business, I did not go into debt. I was behind on my bills, as I've talked about this story in a previous video.
Yes.
But I did not have to go into debt to sell or create my service. I just telemarketed. I didn't pay for advertising.
Mm-hmm.
I just, pounded the phones, dial the number, there you go.
Right. No, people get that, sure. Yeah.
And called and got some sales. I was able to be profitable. Now, a few years later, I had some ideas of expanding and growing, and I made a bad decision. I got a $15,000 line of credit, business loan from Zions Bank. They're the only bank that would give it to me. And my plans didn't work out as I foresaw. Yeah, that's been something that I regret.
So that burned you a little. So to go into debt to start a business, you haven't had that experience yourself.
Well, and I see large companies where they're doing a funding, they're in their funding phase, or they're gathering all this debt and whatnot, and then they're finally going to be profitable in 3 years. That's a different world. I don't know that world,
right.
So I can't really talk to that world.
No, right. Let's be clear. We're talking about small business owners.
Solopreneurs or small businesses. It's a dangerous thing. If you get a loan before you actually know that you can make a sale, so it's got to be a calculated risk. If you're going into debt because you're already making sales but you just need more inventory or something, you're just getting more inventory because you got customers that need to buy it.
That's different.
So
yeah.
I can't give blanket advice across the board.
Yeah.
But just understand that there's a huge risk. If there's a way of starting your business, kind of bootstrapping it, and growing yourself into a good income, if I'm saying it the right way, that's definitely my recommendation.
So yeah, just kind of allow the natural growth that occurs and be prepared for it based on the capital that you begin with, which is probably from your own pockets, from your own savings, from your kids' college fund, from retirement. At least that's not debt. I mean, some people would say, gosh, I've got to cash in some of my 401k. I'm going to take a big hit on taxes, but I need something to start with. At least it's your money, right? I mean, you won't owe anybody anything.
I believe that we all kind of have a ceiling or a thermostat that will always
Those are two
operate.
Completely different things, by the way.
Let's use the thermostat then. I could go either way, but let's go with the thermostat.
Thermostat or thermometer?
Thermostat.
Okay, so because thermostat regulates the...
Thermostat regulates. So if we want to be right at 72 degrees, or that's where we're comfortable, if the heat starts to get turned up, the AC is going to turn on and bring us right back down to where we're comfortable. Okay, so what I'm talking about here is if finances are tough and I don't have a loan, so I'm trying to make it by I'm trying to make enough sales, the heat's going to be turned up and I'm going to be working hard to make ends meet. I'm going to be thinking outside of the box. I'm going to be trying things that I normally wouldn't do. I might be working longer hours so that I can make sure that we get results. But if I've got a loan, Zions Bank gives me $15,000, it's like, I've got a little cushion here, and I can, it's gonna pick up next month. Just keep doing what I'm doing. It's gonna get better and better and better.
Well, you would think that pressure to perform, the pressure to pay that back, for most people would be the thing that ignites them, gets them out, and calls them, holy, I don't want to default on this loan.
The interest rate was 5%, and it's like, that's just a risk. I mean, hopefully you'd think it didn't work that way for me. Obviously.
But you're okay now. So it worked out. You got out of debtor's prison or whatever they do to people like you.
It's a mental.
It's a mental prison.
Yeah. So, I thought that we could turn this video into some practical advice because I was not taught this from an early age. I did not know how to use a credit card. I knew that credit cards were good for developing credit.
Right.
And so I got a credit card.
And for renting cars, and you know what I'm saying. I mean, you need a credit card for or to check into a hotel and things like that.
But as you're a teenager or entering your 20s and you're starting to get into career thinking and you're starting to develop your credit, that's the age I was in my early 20s, and I got some credit cards. The mistake that I made, and this sounds obvious, but I bought things when I didn't have the money for them.
Yes.
But I thought that I was going to get the money. I had a summer sales job for a few summers.
Oh, okay.
And I last summer I did really well. I made 20 grand in just 3 months. So I'm going to buy this thing now. Let's say it's spring.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy, I'll just be real, I'm going to buy this audio recording equipment for my a cappella group because I know I'll be able to pay it off this summer.
That's because too nerdy to make up.
I'm going to make...
That's totally true, I'm sure.
I'm going to make twice as much this summer. Right. That's really what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Did I make twice as much?
I don't know.
I made more, but only by a few thousand. And I actually could have paid off my studio equipment.
But you didn't?
But then I needed a new car. And I actually had enough cash that I could have paid for the car. But I thought, well, I'll pay half of it with cash, and I'll put half of it on my credit card so I can build up my credit. Anyway, a few years later, all my credit cards were maxed out, and I was struggling to make the payments on them.
Yikes. Yeah.
So it was rough, and I carried that burden of that debt into my marriage, and that was a real problem.
Yeah,
that was a bad deal. Credit
interest
cards
never sleeps.
So the right way, let's talk about what is the right way to use a credit card. And I love this. It's if I'm going to buy something that I have money for. So first of all, don't buy it unless you have the money for it.
See, and that's the problem with most kids these days is they're not educated on that at all. They just go, oh, this just buys me things.
Yeah. So you have to, if I'm going to go buy some clothes, and it's going to cost me $200. I need to have that $200 in cash or in my bank account.
Right.
But then I can use my credit card to buy it.
And then pay it.
And then when I get home, I send $200 to pay off the credit card. That's a good way to use a credit card, and it will develop your credit.
Builds the credit up.
You'll get little bonus points or whatever perks the credit card has. So it'll build your credit, and you won't get into trouble. But that's really the only way that you should really use credit cards, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean... There, like you say, there are risks. I've never used credit cards for business. I mean, I use them for business all the time because I have a business card for my business. But in terms of, saying, I know I've got a $35,000 or $50,000 limit on this card, or I can write a check today for $25,000. That's basically the credit card's way of saying, companies saying, you've got an 800 score, we love you, here's some free checks, go on a spending spree. But if I know it's a capital investment and it's something that I absolutely must have for my business, it's hard to resist that. Mm-hmm. If I need to buy the Zoom H2N or H4N, right? And I know that's going to set me back $2,000 or whatever they are.
$150.
Is that all?
That's it.
Well, then I'll just walk out of the store with it. I'm not even going to pay. If it's $150, they're not even going to miss that. So just steal it.
I don't know where this video is going.
No, I was going to say, I've always lived that way. Same way, if we don't have the money for it, we're not using the card. The card really is for us to get miles, to get points, and to build our credit score. That's really all it is. And then in those rare emergencies when, you've got a dental emergency, something maybe that you might not have as much money for, but okay, we'll pay it off in 2 months, or we'll,
It is nice to use an emergency. It's better to have a nest egg of cash for an emergency But, you know, if you've got something that comes up.
It's never happened to me personally, but I'm just saying it could happen to others.
So I've got another piece of advice going back to starting a business, you know, with debt. My because you can start your business in a grand way. And if you think about all the different services I've offered, from website design, search engine optimization, to video production, to all the stuff that I do for YouTube.
All the nerdy stuff.
The events that I've put on.
See?
Okay, I think it's cool stuff.
No, it is.
Imagine if I would have, day one, launched all those services at once, and then I would need all the camera equipment, I would need this. Or think about if you're going to start a store and you're going to have one product versus a whole product line right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendation is just to start with one thing. Keep it simple. Start with one thing and make sure you can sell it and sell it well. And when that starts to take off, start another service or start another product. Because in order to start big and you're not selling any one thing, you're going to have to go into debt to do that. And it's better when you have the focus. So another point or advice that I want to give, you may have heard the phrase shiny object syndrome. Have you heard of that?
I can imagine what it is. I've heard of shiny object.
Yeah, so if shiny object syndrome means that you can't resist. So some new opportunity comes along, or some new course or some new marketing thing. Ooh, it's this new app that's going to send people a text message and you're going to get tons of leads. It's like, if it's really cool, you've got to bookmark it, but you've got to stay focused on the thing that you know is going to work, and because stuff like that can just eat up your funds. It can pull you into debt.
A lot of organizations are never debt free. I mean, they have debt service that goes on and on and on and on. That's just part of who they are. Mm-hmm. And I think about that, and I scale it down to just me on my own, and I go, my gosh, I could never sleep at night. I still drive by these buildings and see these big companies and know that they're constantly in debt. That we might make a profit this quarter for the first time in 5 years. A profit? You know, so we're actually going to make more than we've spent and all of our debt and everything else. I mean, that is frightening to me.
Yeah.
But it's tempting to go, I've got a card that I know has this much I could use. Don't do it. It's just nice, measured approach.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you found some advice there that will
You'll have to dig.
benefit you.
You might have to dig a little, but you'll find it.
Talking about your comments?
Exactly.
All right, like, subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow.